Hey, you Vienna players, heads up. I've got another really interesting line to show you that you might come across. I've just played a game with this line, and when I checked my notes, I did actually have met it before and figured out what to do against it, but I didn't do the right thing in this game. Okay, so first let me take you through the game. e4, e5, knight to c3, the Vienna. Okay, we have the Vienna Gambit. My opponent here is rated nearly 1500, okay? Gambit accepted and e5, hitting the knight. Now, there are normally two moves that you will find in this situation. Obviously, the knight can't progress to any of these squares because they're all covered. You'll usually find either knight retreating to g8 or possibly the queen coming to e7, pinning the pawn, in which case you do the same and unpin the pawn, and the knight's going to have to go back to g8, right? However, you may find an opponent who is a crazy horse, okay? And so my opponent here thought for nearly a minute and played knight to d5. And it's not quite as insane as it looks, right? But as white, you've got to know what you're doing. So I grab the knight, and now we have queen to h4, check. Right, now, I now make a mistake. I thought that g3 is absolutely fine, okay, blocking the check, and then hopefully on the next go I'll be able to capture the pawn with a knight, something like that, okay. So we have f takes g3. Now obviously I can't recapture straight away, but this is actually dangerous. So I now play knight out to f3 to hit the queen, and I figure that if pawn takes, I can just capture the queen, right? Now we get queen to e4. And this appears to be a fork on the king and the knight, but I can play knight back to e3, right? Now he plays his bishop out to b4, and I blunder, okay? I play bishop to d3, thinking I can hit the queen. However, what does black do next? Can you see it? Pause if you need to. Queen takes knight, right? Because the knight's defender is actually pinned by the bishop. It's an absolute pin. I can't recapture, okay? Now, fortunately, I managed to get back into the game. So we trade queens, and I decide to recapture here with my king rather than the bishop because the queens are off the board, so let's activate the king. We trade off the pawns there. Now, I'm actually 2 pawns down at this point. My opponent develops his knight, I kick the bishop. Bishop retreats to e7. I bring out my bishop, now targeting f7. Okay. We have d6, and we trade off the pawns. Obviously, recaptures with the bishop, maintaining the integrity of his 2 lovely sets of trios of pawns there. So I sidestep, now targeting g7, pushes g6, and now the knight comes in. So I've got 2 attackers now on this square. His knight comes out, and I retreat the bishop. Kicks my knight, I retreat back to e4, bishop comes out with check, I push forwards, bishop now forks knight and rook, and he trades off his light square bishop for my knight. Yes, he's 2 pawns up, but I don't think that quite justifies giving up the bishop pair, but you know, we could argue about that. But now black castles, right? So look at me, I've got this rogue king in the middle of the board. My opponent has castled to safety. However, in my defense, I have the bishop pair still. I'm going to be playing d4 very shortly, and obviously I want to get my pawns on dark squares because my opponent, we've got an opposite coloured bishop situation, right? Also notice that the bishop's looking at that pawn and the knight is the only defender of that pawn. So d4 comes, the knight has to run away, but attacks the rook. So I grab the pawn with the rook. He wants to trade. I say, okay, let's trade, right? And now, yeah, because I spotted this, right? In fact, on the previous move, as soon as he put his knight there, well, I had to move the rook anyway, didn't I? But then I saw the bishop fork, right? And there's no way to defend against it. We trade rooks and bang. Okay, he can't bring his rook down here with check, Well, he's in check anyway, so he's got to get out of check. So the knight's going to fall. All right. Okay, so king moves, knight falls. I bring out my bishop. Only have some fiddling around. So here I'm reinforcing this pawn. I'm not going to allow him to take that away from me. But now another fork on rook and pawn. In this instance, he does have a defense, but here he actually resigns. Okay, so very, very interesting. But let me show you how I should have played it. Okay, so let's go over to the analysis board, and you can see it's a real roller coaster of a game here. And let's figure out what the issue is, and let's see what you should play as white if you ever get this crazy horse move. Okay, so knight to there. It says it's a mistake. White is plus 3.5 already. Okay, obviously you capture. Queen h4 check is best, and now you don't play g3. Okay, g3 is a blunder, but let's find out why it was a blunder. So now I can do show line. Pawn takes, bishop to there. Okay, well that's not what happened in the game anyway. So, so pawn takes. Yeah, because what I played was this, right, which is actually best. So what it's saying is a blunder if I move the bishop. Anyway, so knight there is best. However, black is actually still slightly better here. Okay, now threatening to win material. And it says that actually pushing the pawn, oh, that's interesting. That is an interesting line, isn't it? Wow, okay. But, so, for that reason, g3 is not the move to make. The move that you are supposed to make, as it will show you here, king e2. Okay, and let's see what happens with king e2. So you're really solidifying the fact that you've got this extra knight. You've got a mobile king, it's out in the open, but you've got an extra minor piece, so you should be absolutely fine. And here the engine's got it as nearly +4 for white. So update your notes, guys. Work through this on the Explorer or on the analysis board if you want to. You need to know how to respond to this line, because it's very easy to get a bit excited that you've won a piece, but if your opponent knows what they're doing, you could get undone. Also, if you find that you face the Vienna at any time, if you're an e4, e5 player, yeah, as black, I don't know, you might want to give this crazy knight move a whirl. But there you go. So that's your wild horse line in the Vienna Gambit. Just thought I'd better let you know in case you ever come across it. But I'm glad that I've met it again, and I need to commit it to memory. Okay, thanks for watching, everyone. See you later.